Welcome back, everybody, to the Podecito podcast. I am your host, The Real 49. Thank you for joining me as we journey episode through our collective favorite show. Of course, I'm talking about the incomparable Las Vegas. We are now on episode 4. Is it 4? It is 4 of season 2. Catch of the day. This episode aired originally October 4th, 2004, just a day after Desperate Housewives. I found out last week. It has an IMDb rating of 7.7 out of 10 and a Las Vegas - the series rating, which you can check out on the Wayback Machine. Go and support the Wayback Machine if you can. They're doing the Lord's work, after all, preserving the internet from people who would want to, make sure that you don't find stuff that used to be on the internet anymore. Their rating for it is 4 out of 5 chips, which brings the aggregate rating for this episode from those two places to 7.85 out of 10. This episode was written by Michael Burns, and though it is credited to Gary Scott Thompson on IMDb, his name does not flash on the screen as the episode starts to credit him as a writer. So we are going to go with that for GST. However, we do all know that he, in fact, Sam?
He's the puppet master!
He is, in fact, the puppet master. Yes, he is. This episode was directed by Peter O'Fallon. Peter O'Fallon has done a bunch of stuff. This is his first episode directing for Las Vegas. He started out with 2 episodes of 30-something back in the day. Fast forward a couple years, he does a movie called Suicide Kings with Johnny Galecki, of all people. I have a whole tirade about Johnny Galecki, but we'll ignore that for now. Jeremy Sisto, great actor, especially liked him on Suburgatory. Sean Patrick Flannery, Christopher Walken, and Jay Moore. I want to say I can't wait till we get to the Jay Moore episode. I definitely can. Because I have my thoughts on Jay Moore, but we'll ignore that. He then goes on to direct an episode of Prey, starring Deborah Messing and Vincent Ventresca. You remember him from the episode where he and his buddy were terrorizing Sam. He also did an episode of Cupid with Paula Marshall and Jeremy Piven. He directs this episode of Las Vegas, and he will then direct My Beautiful Laundrette, which is going to be episode 11 of the same season. And that'll be the end of Peter O'Fallon as our director. He moves on to direct an episode of Leverage, and the latest thing he directed was 4 episodes of The Game. There's a couple things. Leverage on his resume is probably the closest. Maybe Cupid too, because Cupid was a lighter, fair show. But I would say, but Leverage was after Las Vegas, so there was nothing necessarily leading up to it other than maybe you could say that episode of Cupid that could maybe think that he could direct Las Vegas, certainly in the way that he directs this episode, but we do see some talent here, and we'll talk about that very shortly. I do like the work that Peter O'Fallon did in this episode. This episode starts with a very enthusiastic, very energetic Asian man at the table. Looks like a high roller table. He's at his own private area. He's betting big. He's got the big purple chips, and he even tells the dealer that he's going to
double down. Little one, yes.
We are told that this guy is playing $50,000 a hand on 2 tables for at least 12 hours. That equals to $84,457.91 a hand on 2 tables for at least 12 hours. Goodness. So there are 7 seats at a standard blackjack table. So if we take that number of 84,457.91, multiply that by 14, then Big Willie, for at least 12 hours, is playing $1,182,410.74 for the last 12 hours. That's a lot. And we find out that that's Big Willie because Nessa says
50,000 a hand on 2 tables for the last 12 hours. Gotta love Big Willie.
Yes, you gotta love Big Willie. Big Willie is one of my favorite guest stars, and we only get to see him for this one time, and that's a shame. But Big Willie is one of my favorite guest stars. He is played by an actor named Dana Lee. Dana Lee's career started on an episode of Ironside as Jay in 1974 for an episode. He then goes on to do the original Hawaii Five-0. Yes, he does in 1978 as Victor Fong for an episode. He then goes on to do an episode of The Rousters as a Yakuza. That stars Chad Everett, Jim Varney, and former guest star Mimi Rogers. He then goes on to be in Rambo First Blood Part 2 with future guest star Sylvester Stallone in 85. He then goes on to guest star in an episode of Hardcastle and McCormick as a van driver with former guest star Daniel Hugh Kelly. How about that? He then goes on to guest star with Jamie Lee Curtis, Danny Glover, Steve Guttenberg, Shelley Duvall, Martin Short in Tall Tales and Legends, alongside former guest star Elliot Gould in 1986. Yes. He then goes on to do an episode of Out of This World, which I'm only mentioning because I love that show, and it's a shame that that's basically rapidly becoming lost media, but that's a terrific show. Find it. There. Last time I checked, which was a couple years ago, there was at least a season or two worth of episodes on YouTube. Find those and preserve those as best you can. He then goes on to guest star in an episode of Lois and Clark, alongside future guest star Dean Cain. Fast forward a couple years, he's Big Willie here in Las Vegas. The most prominent role that you might have seen him in is in Dr. Ken as DK Park for 27 episodes. Then goes on to do... We did that already. Oh. He then goes on to... What? The bit's over. We did the bit. What are we... We did it. Anyway. He then goes on to do... Oh, it's Hawaii Five-0, the Scotty Khan version. Yes. He plays Mr. Kimura for 3 episodes. And then fast forward, the latest thing you can see him in was Rebel Ridge in 2024 as Mr. Liu, alongside former prospective Ed DeLine Don Johnson. Yes! Dana Lee was born in a village outside of Canton, China. His family immigrated to the U.S. when he was 7, and he ended up settling in Houston, Texas. He did not develop a Houston, Texas accent. But apparently, Dana was very shy, took up acting lessons, and overcame it. And then he immediately fell in love. And that's, you love to hear stories like that. Thank you for being shy, I guess, Dana Lee, because there's no shyness in Big Willie in this performance at all. Certainly not in the first few seconds that we see him here. He's got my 2 favorite queens, Mary and Nessa, talking about him and laughing it up, just enjoying his presence even from afar. We learn that his daughter is having a wedding here, and that's why Big Willie is here at the tables. Mary is planning the wedding. It's the big event that the event planner has to plan. And Sam has wrangled 1,000 lobsters for Big Willie's daughter's wedding. Oh.
The man loves his shellfish.
The man does love his shellfish. And then Mary tells Nessa that she managed to book Michael Buble. Nessa says that she hasn't heard of him yet. This is around the time, kids, there was a time, believe it or not, when the world didn't know who Michael Buble was. And 2004 was about that time. I remember getting his first album. And I think I got his first album because my cousin Brianna she was in love with that boy. She was in love with that skinny little Canadian boy. And actually wasn't that skinny. Certainly not in this episode, but she was in love with that Canadian boy. And she, I don't know how well, I do, because she's an old soul. Like, she still watches black and white TV. Like, I do too. Like, I don't necessarily seek it out, but like, and I don't watch TV, but I'm sure there's a Lucy channel on her somewhere. But like, it's one of those things where like she actively probably her, like, if she finds a streaming service that plays black, like, she probably only watches that realistically. And so she loved Michael Bublé's sound. And so she found Michael Bublé and she turned him on to me. And I was like, oh, yeah, this guy's great. And now Michael Bublé is an artist that I enjoy. And I enjoy doing karaoke of. Like, his songs, his versions of songs are usually what I warm up with. He's very talented. I do like Michael Bublé. We'll get to Michael Bublé later. But Nessa doesn't know who he is yet. This is at the start of his career, really taking off in a big way. And so that's a good, I love seeing that on Las Vegas. Now, I guess he had been around, because this aired in 2004. I'm pretty sure I got his CD in 2003. I might be wrong, though, but I was pretty sure I got it in 2003. But it was either way, it was like in that frame, in that time frame. It was around that time. I'm pretty sure it had to have been 2003. I could have sworn it was 2003. I could have sworn. This is October 2004. Yeah, I could have sworn it was 2003. Anyway, she doesn't know who he is. Mary says that Willie's daughter enjoys him and that she's going to have a great wedding. And Big Willie, very prominently, it certainly struck me when Nessa goes over to change the dealer. Big Willie chimes in with,
Blackjack! Oh, no, change the dealer.
Listen, I don't know that I've ever tried that, Willie. I feel like I should try it, but I also feel like I shouldn't try that. I also feel like if I'm like, hey, let's not change the dealer here, that might bring more of the eyes on the sky towards me than I would like. not that there wouldn't be, but there are definitely dealers that you vibe with while you're sitting there, and that's usually when they change them out, and that's usually when they change them out. And they bring in a cooler dealer. They bring in somebody with I hate the dealers with no personality. The fake, I think I hate the dealers with fake personality worse, but I certainly hate the ones with the no personality, with the just the machines that just deal and seem mean about it and seem like they're angry that they have to take your money, but mad at, like, glad to take your money at the same time. I don't like those. I don't like those. But, so I get it. I get the not wanting to change your dealer, Willie. Trust me. Mary then is met with the group from PAR, or People Advocates for Animal Rights. And one of the animal rights advocates asks Mary about the soap in their rooms, and Mary has to reassure them that there is absolutely no animal byproducts in the room, no tallow or animal testing. They are 100%, and the animal rights activist is very happy about this. He's smiling from ear to ear. His group is smiling from ear to ear. Now, mind you, or at least the organizers, because there's only a handful of them. I'm guessing that's not the entire convention. I'm guessing that's just the organizers, and that's cool. Let's talk about that guy, by the way, that guy that she's talking with. Our girl Mary is conversing with Wayne Perret? Wayne Perret? P-E with an accent, R-E. His first credited role was in 1989 in an episode of Alien Nation, which is interesting because James Caan was in the movie version of Alien Nation. He was in the TV show, was this Wayne Perry guy. He also was in an episode of Lois and Clark with future guest star Dean Cain. How about that? Fast forward a few years, and VIP comes up again for an episode for this guy. He plays Larry Phelan, and we don't hear his first name here. We will hear it a bit later. Here in this episode, he is coming back. He's not just asking about the soap. And he then is seen not too long after this in another Vegas property, Ocean's 13, as the fireworks guy. Fast forward through a career full of credits. And the latest thing you could see Wayne in was FBI Most Wanted as Jeff Scholes in 2024. That's Wayne Perret, and he's got Mary. She's very good at her job of event planning and making people feel like they're welcome there at the Montecito, that warm, welcoming smile, of course, and going the extra mile. I don't know if it's extra mile really for a group like this. Like, it's probably the mile. And one would think with stuff like that the Montecito would maybe or maybe not lean more into it, however they feel about the subject, but they'd at least have some of those on hand in the future if there are other guests who want to stay that meet that accommodation. How long and how often they whip those things out, the different soaps out. Now, mind you, the cruelty-free, one would think that maybe that would kind of already be their brand, but they are a major casino, so you can never tell. So Mary immediately after that runs into Michael Bublé, and I love this shot. Or at least this sequence. This is a great sequence. We start off with the high energy of Big Willie. We then roll over into a seemingly calmer, seemingly less important interaction with a group of people that, maybe spark your interest, if you're more inclined towards the vegan lifestyle, etc., more towards the animal rights lifestyle, etc., in the friendliest incarnation. And then, if maybe somebody's attention is getting wavered, you bring in the teeny bopper Canadian from, I was going to say Canadian, but I almost feel like that's feminized. The Canadian Mr. Bublé, in who all the kids or all the teen girls are swooning over to bring life back into it, to maybe make you not want to change the channel. This is all before the credits. Mary runs into Michael Bublé with the giant smile on his face here, and Michael runs down how he ended up getting there. First, he was going to do a show in England. Next thing he knows, he's on a jet, and he's in Vegas. Now, Bublé apparently didn't do private functions, or at least that's what we're hearing here in this particular clip. And he's happy to do it. He hasn't done it in a while, but he wants to try to do something different. Keep that in mind. We mentioned Michael Bublé a little bit earlier. I told you a bit of my history. Let's talk about Michael Bublé. His first credited role was as submarine sailor, uncredited, in the X-Files. His first credited role was as a drone groupie in Death Game, which is a TV movie in '96. He then goes on to do Duets, which is a karaoke movie starring Gwyneth Paltrow and Huey Lewis. I've heard about this movie. I haven't seen this movie. I'm actually planning on watching it relatively soon because I've got an idea for a movie in my head about karaoke that I have had for a while. And I haven't seen this movie because I didn't want it to influence me. But I think this is going to be one of the times where I actually am going to view something that's similar to what I have in my head first. For various reasons, there's things I want to kind of explore and see that I think would be good. But anyway, he was in that movie as a finale singer. I'm looking more specifically towards his roles that he's had where he wasn't playing Michael Bublé. Like, his IMDb is full of his music video credits. But I am including this episode of Las Vegas because he's playing a version of Michael Bublé. How close it is to the actual Bublé, I'm not exactly sure. Fast forward through all his musical credits, his music video credits, he goes to, "Hey guys, it's 3 a.m." as Michael Bubbles in 2019. And the latest thing you can see him in, whether that's as himself or not, I guess that was the latest thing you can see him in that he probably wasn't playing himself. The latest thing you can see him in at all was Jack Whitehall in Jack in Time for Christmas in 2024 as Michael Bublé. I'm not sure how close to the actual person he got there. His trademarks, since we're talking about him, are that he ends his concerts by singing without a microphone. That really just shows off the power of his voice to be able to reverberate all the way to the cheap seats without a microphone. That's just showing off your power. His sophisticated persona, okay, sure, that goes with the type of music that he sings, as well as being a right pain in the arse. Something tells me we will see a little bit of that, or a lot of bit of that, in this episode. Apparently, Bublé's grandfather was a plumber who, whenever he would do a repair at a nightclub, would do it for free so long as they allowed his grandson to sing at the club. Now that's support. That's support. That is, I should have been born Canadian, man. That is support. Anyway, Bublé wants to try something new. We're moving on to Delinda, who is still trying to pawn off her 9th grade boyfriend onto somebody to babysit him while she is swamped at work, at least for a few hours. Nessa is saying she doesn't necessarily want to do it. That's more Sam's job. Mary at least understands the plight. She was probably told by Delinda beforehand. And Delinda tells the story of how she met this guy, Jay is his name, her 9th grade boyfriend, and how they became friends. Apparently, Delinda was a tomboy, believe it or not.
Didn't you break his nose? Only after he tried to kiss me.
Oh, that doesn't sound like you at all.
I used to be a tomboy.
That's quite a change.
She says that she had no one to talk to, and that made me think. That made me wonder. What about Nessa? Why wouldn't she have talked to Nessa? And then I thought about it. I was looking. I was like, why would there... And Nessa is engaging with Delinda telling this story to Mary like she was there. It's not like she's listening to the story and acting like she wasn't there. She doesn't remember this, right? She even chimes in that he broke her nose, or she broke his nose, etc., because he tried to kiss her. And it made me think, it's like, oh, she probably was there. What would the reason be that, and it made me think, what would the reason be that Delinda and Nessa wouldn't be able to speak at school? And then it occurred to me, what about their ages? And you know what? Turns out, Marsha Thomason is a couple years younger than Molly Sims. So that makes sense. So if is 9th grade, 14 years old, that would mean Nessa would be back in 7th grade. Would be about 12 or 13. 12. We'll call it 12. 11 going in, 11 about to be 12, or just straight up 12 through the school year. That makes sense. So keeping that in mind, that's fine. I don't know if they did it on purpose. Seems that they may have thought more about this little thread than they did with Nessa not attending to the Delines last episode while they were dealing with Ed's issue. But yeah, so that makes sense. That tracks. If you follow it, the numbers add up on this one. I will give the kudos to Las Vegas. Feels like it's too coincidental that it would all fit for them not to at least know that on some level and implement that in their telling of the story of Delinda and her crush on her 14 or her 9th grade, they're both 14, on her 9th grade boyfriend when she had no one to talk to. That would make sense if Nessa was either in another school or even in another class of the school, because I know some schools, particularly back then, might have had a hybrid of junior and high school together. That makes sense, but many of them probably had a junior high school near high school. Anyway, all that makes sense. So Delinda is asking Mary and Nessa to kind of babysit this guy, Jay, and just be nice to him. Please promise to be nice to him. The three queens see Jay flash a smile. Delinda looks back like, oh yeah, that's him. Promise you'll be nice, please. And Nessa and Mary are quite taken aback by this ruggedly handsome young man. They both look at each other and say,
I promise I'll be nice. Me too.
Miss Mary Connell, please don't forget the hardware that you're wearing on your hand. And please don't, do we have a challenger? Has a new challenger arrived for the crown? Oh, I won't even say it. I don't even know. It feels sacrilegious to say that. I won't say it. At least not yet. I certainly won't say that. But we see our friend Jay here. Well, we might as well talk about Jay. The rugged good looks of this guy. Here's the thing. I thought that this guy was also the guy who played the dad in Raising Hope, because they kind of look similar to me, but he wasn't. This is an actor by the name of Jeff Stoltz. Jeff Stoltz has quite the resume himself. Jeff started out with an episode of Everybody Loves Raymond. He then fast forwards to an episode of The Chronicle, starring alongside former and future guest star Reno Wilson. He plays Jake on Joey, then plays Jay in Las Vegas. Coincidence? Maybe, probably. Like, I don't think it's the same character. Maybe it's the same character. I never saw Joey, so you tell me if Jake went to there's Las Vegas and Joey was set in L.A. Los Angeles is only a couple hours away from Vegas, so maybe Joey knows him as Jake. This is a lot of J's. Maybe Joem. Oh my gosh. Maybe Joey knows him as Jake. Maybe Jake is his full name, and Delinda just calls him Jay as a nickname. But he was passing through L.A. on his road trip to finish everything off in Las Vegas. A little bit of headcanon there to connect. Maybe. He then goes on to do 23 episodes. He was doing it in between, too, but he did 23 episodes of Seventh Heaven as Ben Kirk alongside his brother. He then goes on to do 19 episodes of October Road as Eddie LaQuetta. So between those two, that's probably where you know him the best. He then goes on to do an episode of Bones, which is really a backdoor pilot for a show that he would get a little bit later on called The Finder. In both of those, he played Walter Sherman. The Finder was, I believe, the last thing Michael Clark Duncan did. I believe it was. And it was actually a really good, underrated show. It was a very good, underrated show. If you like Las Vegas, if you like Bones, you'll probably like The Finder. It was only on for a season. It got its 13 episodes, and then Fox, in the midst, I think I've regaled the story of how Fox in this era, and that was about roundabouts the end of that era. That was the tail end of it, where they had really good shows, and they just kept throwing them away. Especially because they got more into the reality game show, American Idol style show presentation business more than a lot of other stuff. So while they had some really good fictional work in the early to mid 2000s, even into 2012, they threw a lot of them away. And The Finder is another one that they really threw away. The Finder, I believe, is on streaming services. So find The Finder is what I'll tell you. Fast forward, and Jeff Stoltz's latest thing that you could see him in was The Irrational as Shell Benson in 2025. That's Jeff Stoltz, former professional football player in Europe, and I mean actual football, not football, but actual football. Our boy Jeff was a wide receiver. So you can see the height, and that'll come into play. He's got a scene with Danny in it where they're shoulder to shoulder, and that makes sense. You can see the charm. You can see the smile. That's a good smile. That's a good, hats off to his dentist. That's a good smile. And again, I like that. It was a fast-paced intro here so far, and the sweep around section, and we're still about halfway through the intro. We still haven't actually gotten through the intro yet, but a lot of this kind of captures your attention, especially if like you're a young lady or inclined to young, roguish, handsome rakes like this young man, our boy Jeffrey Stoltz, aka Jay, who just walked in. That'll keep your attention. I like that for an intro. That's a good intro. So we whoosh up to surveillance, and we see Mike just kind of looking at the footage, and Ed comes in and asks what's going on, how is everything going. Nothing major is happening. We got a couple of drunks. We got some guy who thinks he's Elvis, and then next thing you know, we get a call, and Mike says that someone just stole a lobster delivery truck. Ed doesn't know where Danny is. We do. He's on the back of that lobster truck.
Yeah, I'm way ahead of you on this one, Ed. Nothing to worry about. I'll get back to you.
Yeah, Danny, Danny, I listen, he's right on that one. He was way ahead of Ed and tried to hang on while still talking on the phone, but eventually gets swung off the truck. Just say I'm way ahead of you and then hang up the phone, because now mind you, I don't know exactly what he would hold on to at that point, but something would tell me he would need both hands. At least trying to do that with just one hand is in fact dangerous. And I know you don't necessarily want to lose your cell phone, especially in 2004. Do you know how expensive phones were back then? Not to mention minutes and all the plans and all. You didn't want to go through all that stuff. And then if you did, you had to transfer everything manually over, every phone number, every whatever, unless you had the chip. And I don't know if the chips came later. The chips, the cards, the memory cards might have been at the same time, if not a little bit behind that. But even then, if you did that, like, that's still a whole process. And if it falls off the truck, it's going to get broken. You don't know which part of your phone is broken. Put it in your pocket, Danny, and then continue the chase. But we then go back to Jay's room. And Delinda asks Jay why he decided he's going to come to Vegas. Our boy Jay tells Delinda that he's got a few things on his bucket list that he wants to kick off.
I have 4 more to go. Witness the desert sunrise, sing over the canals of Venice, and skydive over Sin City.
And that's only 3.
We always save the best for last. Make love to the first girl I ever kiss.
That's so sweet.
Yeah, does she not know that Delinda was that she was the first girl he ever kissed? Also, though, 9th grade, like that sounds sweet if you don't think about it, but 9th grade was your first kiss ever in 9th grade? It took you till 9th grade? Did it really? It took you to 9th grade? Kevin Arnold and the Wonder Years with Winnie Cooper in that first episode. That was junior high. Don't you get that done in junior high? That's probably why Delinda maybe didn't believe it offhand, because, you know, she knew that she kissed him. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he managed to not tell her that she was the first one that he ever kissed. But, you know, which at that point, one would think that a lot of times, like, you could kind of get away with saying that still in 9th grade and come off as cute. Like, you're not gonna. But okay, she ever, like, really? Like 9th grade, like not junior high, like isn't usually junior high, if not elementary school, even like kid, like how do you define kiss? But you know, 2 people pressing lips against each other, like that never happened in a non-familiar way. That never happened to you before 9th grade. Jay, as good looking as this kid is, that never happened before then. What? What? I mean, maybe he looked a lot different back then, but the Jay that we see now, he should have been all right before 9th grade. Anyway, Delinda is flabbergasted by that. She's saying it's going to take a little bit of time for Jay to woo her or trick her or whatever, but Jay says,
Well, I hope not. Only have a month to live. Dying of cancer.
And we immediately hard cut to the intro. And I mean hard cut. We hard cut, we tonal shift, we get basically whiplash coming and going off of that tonal shift between Jay dying of cancer and Delinda's look, and the lightness of that intro up to that point. So yeah, that's a lot to take in as we go into the intro. Hold on a second, let's get a new deck in here and we'll be right back.
I assume you're interested in large amounts of money.
It's Vegas, who isn't?
If you like the podcast and you want to help support it, you can send a Cash App, join our Patreon or Subscribe Star, or buy us a coffee. Just search The Podecito on all those platforms. As you go into the intro and you're watching on a streaming service, whichever that streaming service might be, that streaming service might ask you, dear listener and or viewer, if you want to skip the introduction. And you can skip that streaming service. I don't know why you would want to skip this intro. It's the best damn intro in the business. You don't skip this intro. As we finish with the intro, we see Danny all dusted up, limping at the Montecito dock, talking to the cops and another employee or that probably looks like the truck driver as they go over the truck theft. And Danny doesn't necessarily think it's a big deal, except that truck full of lobsters was full of lobsters for Big Willie's daughter's wedding. And they need to get that back because you see Big Willie on his last visit dropped $10 million, which in today's money translates to $16,891,582.85. Large William dropped at the table. So yes, I would say that is a substantial amount of money that is worthy of the Montecito's time to figure out this case. So we then whoosh through the casino. Big Willie is still on a roll, doubling down, winning drinks in his velour tracksuit. I don't want to know what Big Willie does for a living. Just saying. And Delinda and Jay talk about Jay's prognosis. Really not his prognosis, but really the situation of him dying of cancer. And Delinda has all the questions or a lot of the questions that the viewer at home might have, that a critic might have, that somebody who recognizes these tropes might have. the guest star that whooshes through town and says that he has a short time to live, and in that short time he's going to change everybody's life who he touches, right? That is, in fact, a TV trope. And it can be done well, and it very often is not done well. But Delinda does a good job of, with her questions, mitigating a lot of the stuff that a lot of people would be saying, although part of that is the trope. Like these questioning things are a part of that trope as well. But Delinda doesn't believe Jay at all. She thinks Jay is trying to pull another prank, and Jay tells her that he's not. But he's doing it with a smile on his face. Like, all this is doing with a smile on his face. So Delinda obviously doesn't believe him, and he goes into it again. He says it's not a joke, but she just walks away from him. So we're back in surveillance with our men of the Montecito, the Kings and the Ace, and they see what appears to be the culprit of the robbery, which is really just a foot.
This is all we have.
Looks like a foot.
I was thinking foot too.
Well then, I guess our work is done here today, boys. We were robbed by a foot.
I can't believe you lost my lobsters.
Sam comes storming in. You can see her storm in with her silhouette on the back end there, and she smacks Danny on the back of the head for getting her lobsters, for losing her lobsters. And Ed has to explain to her that your lobsters weren't lost, they were stolen. And Sam explains to us that she was planning on harpooning some of Big Willie's big whale friends for this occasion, and Ed, with some bossly, I was going to say fatherly, but really bossly, Don-like, some advice to Sam, says.
Ed, Big Willie invited his closest, dearest, richest friends to his daughter's wedding. I plan on harpooning a few stray whales before they migrated out of town. I need my lobsters.
Well then, Captain Ahab, I suggest you hunt some more down.
Yes, sir.
Again, we're still building on that reputation between the characters, between the actors, that familiarity, that almost familiar bond between them. And Sam, says, yes, sir, on her way out, because that's the hierarchy of the show. And we whoosh over to see Big Willie still up in his private suite, and Jay over with Nessa. And Jay is trying to get Nessa to help him check off at least something from the list. And Nessa gives away the game when she says that she is definitely not going skydiving. And Jay says, well, skydiving it is then. They talk over the pros and cons of it, and Nessa says something along the lines of,
Okay, what if my chute doesn't open and I crater at 200 miles an hour? It's not going to be fun.
Well, okay, Nessa. Well, first off, it wouldn't be 200 miles an hour. According to Google, it would only be 120. So that's optimum terminal velocity for a human being at that point. So first off, that's that. Secondly, Jay explains to her that...
Oh, come on, don't be silly. That could never happen.
Really?
And you wouldn't crater, you'd bounce.
Bounce.
I love that take from Marsha. She does not feel like bouncing, at least not out of an airplane onto the ground. And she's right, that wouldn't be fun. That would not be fun at all. And then Jay slips in the line.
So, you want to fool around before or after we skydive?
And Marsha, she thinks about... Hold on. Nessa thinks about it. I like this Jay guy. Jay is very affable. I gotta say, Jay is reminding me a lot of myself in some of these scenes. He's reminding me a lot of myself. But I'm telling you, Nessa was thinking about it. Nessa, listen, it's been a minute since Bob. I'm just saying, Nessa, you can do worse. So we go into the theater where Buble wants to show Nessa, or where Buble wants to show Mary. We just finished with Nessa, my other favorite queen. What he wants to do for Big Willie. He's been singing for a while, and his first love apparently is mime. After Mary swoons over him, which is just one of the cutest things that she does in this scene. It's not even the cutest thing she does in this scene. But she, as Buble is telling her about his love of miming, she's trying to convince him that he should still sing. And it's just one of the most adorable things.
Mime has always been my first love.
But Big Willie hired you to sing.
No. But Michael is convinced that he needs to mime. And he starts to demonstrate Buble in a Bubble. And I got to tell you, it's pretty good. He looks like he's got a little bit of flexibility. But then Mary wants to talk to him, and so she yells at him a little bit. And then Buble pops his bubble.
Michael.
Mary, you don't have to yell. Mimes can hear. They just can't talk.
That is a great line read and a great take from Michael. This guy is funny. Michael Buble is funny. And so he goes back to doing Buble in the Bubble, and the bubble's shifting all around him, and poor Mary, just sinks into the front row trying to figure out what she's going to do with her former favorite Canadian crooner. Meanwhile, Sam is trying to get herself some lobsters, and she meets up with a chef who apparently has a history with Sam.
You stole my boyfriend.
Yeah, but he had
At our engagement party.
Now, Sam, you stole this woman's, I guess, fiance at the engagement party. Does that sound like a Sam thing to do? Yeah. Depending on the circumstances, yeah, it definitely does. But so Sam is basically trying to go to somebody, one of the few people in Vegas that she probably wouldn't go to for something like this, who has the supply that she needs, because she needs a supply because it's going to pay dividends for her. And she says that the lobster dinners, that she will go ahead and buy as many as are necessary. So we are told that the chef charges $85 for a lobster dinner, which in today's money is $143.58. Sam says that she'll take $1,000, meaning she's willing to spend $85,000 on this, which in today's money is $143,578.45. She then says that she's even willing to bump that up to a cool $100,000, which in today's money is $168,915.83. But the chef has a counter offer when she says that she'll actually raise the price up to $200,000, which in today's money is $337,831.66.
Make it 200 and you got yourself a deal.
Whoa, what's with the additional $100,000?
Pain and suffering.
Deal. Let me see one of those bad boys.
Pain and suffering deal. Sam is willing to pay the $200K for the pain and suffering because she knows she did it. Because she knows she's guilty. She knows she took the boyfriend at the engagement party. And also because of the millions that she stands to make for the Montecito in doing this, in paying the couple $100,000 up front. She plans on creating millions in the future for the Montecito. And let's face it, for herself as well, because I'm sure she gets a cut of that. So our lovely chef brings out the lobsters, and there's no claws.
They're Pacific lobster. No claws.
Enjoy the pain and suffering.
That is a very Sam response to that. She thought she was getting something in her deal. She's not getting something in the deal, which in and of itself, and it makes sense. That's probably why, because Sam said that she had the freshest lobster in Vegas. That makes sense why she would have the freshest lobster in Vegas, because she's not going to the furthest ocean to get it. She's going to the closest ocean to get it. Yes, Pacific lobster don't have claws. I looked that up. And it's the thing that Big Willie, he wanted a specific type of lobster. When he turned around, he did the lobster claws. So obviously he's going to want the lobsters with the claws. And since these don't have them, these aren't what Sam is looking for. I completely can understand what Sam is talking about with exactly what she's looking for. In some circumstances, you can get away with, not exactly what you need, not exactly what you had in mind. In a lot of instances, that's kind of life. But in some instances, there's definitely stuff that you are looking for. There's a specific reason that you're looking for this specific thing, whether it's food, whether it's entertainment, or a version of a TV show, or a version of a movie. Star Wars fans have not gotten a clean version of Star Wars since the theaters in the 70s. So Star Wars fans have gotten the worst edits, the Han shot first, all the stupid chicanery that's been going on with all the different iterations of Star Wars over the years. Trust me, I get it. Wanting the pure version, wanting the original version, wanting the great version, I get it. A specific version that you want, I get it. Specific flavor or whatever, Sam's right. And I would imagine with the money that Big Willie's spending at the casino and the mood that he's in, it behooves everybody to give him what he wants. And he deserves it. I like Big Willie. Big Willie's got an infectious energy. I like Big Willie. But we're moving on a little bit. Delinda meets up with her dad in the casino floor, and they're making good use of, or significant use of, this particular corner of the casino over by the Moonlight Cabaret stage, the Moonlight Lounge. They're making a good use of that. But Delinda says she needs a favor from Ed, and Ed replies with,
I need a favor.
Favor? That's great. Last time you asked me for a favor, it cost me $1,900 in parking tickets.
That $1,900 in parking tickets, by the way, in today's money translates to $3,209.40. I understand. And Delinda retorts with,
You didn't want the police to boot my Beamer, did you?
Your Beamer. No, sweetheart, of course I didn't.
That line, I understand wholeheartedly from experience. And I can tell you that again, this is very similar experience. That sounds like it wasn't actually Delinda's Beamer. It was Ed's Beamer. It was Delinda's Beamer, though, but it was in Ed's name. Ed bought it for her, or at least financed it, or kept it in his name, or whatever. And that's why he had to pay for the tickets and decided that he wanted to pay for the tickets. Also, it's his little girl. And while both of us have G-Man fathers, the difference between Delinda and I is that she looks like she looks, and I look like I look. She is Daddy's little girl, and I was just a knucklehead son of a former federal agent. So I didn't get the bailout that she did. In similar circumstances, too. My first car was actually still in my dad's name, and I never signed it back over to myself. And long story short, she's getting better treatment from her dad than I did from mine in the exact same situation. But after that conversation, Ed asks her if she's got any more tickets. She says yes, but we'll deal with those later. Oh, boy. Boy, do I know that life, and especially around that time frame, too. But Delinda asks Ed to take a look at Jay's medical files to see if he's really faking or not. Ed brings up the privacy issue, which, again, I feel like they bring up in these episodes specifically just to mention them in the episodes, even though they've mentioned them a couple of times already. And the couple of times that they've mentioned them, Ed was one of the people, so was Danny, that looked at, I think it was Mike usually, who asked the question, like, yeah, okay, medical privacy laws, sure. So it's not like Ed is above violating those. For the greater good of the show, at least, we'll let that pass. And so Ed is notified by Delinda that he says he has cancer, but she doesn't believe him. Ed is taking it more seriously than she is. Ed specifically asks, why would somebody lie about that?
If I told you, you'd kill him quicker than his cancer ever could.
I believe that. So we see Mary and Jay walking through the casino, and Jay is trying to convince Mary to lighten up. Mary is down in the dumps because of Buble In A Bubble and him wanting to become a mime, but Jay is telling her to look on the brighter side of life and to just sing, you know. He's trying to convince her to come out to karaoke with him because that's what he wants to do. He wants to sing in Venice, and she's trying to convince Mary to be the one to sing with him. Mary says that, oh, I knew that you were going to say you were dying, but after Jay reiterates, yeah, he really is, she actually believes him. And of course she does. Of course she's the first one to believe him. Because that's Mary. That's our Mary. We see Sam go up to Big Willie, who is on a winning streak. He's doubling down. He is up $700,000 at this point, which in today's money means that Big Willie is up $1,182,410.80. That's a big win. I'd walk away, but I'm not Big Willie. I'm not Big Willie. Big Willie his energy is infectious. His look is infectious. He is so happy. And you got to also remember, this is the weekend of his daughter's wedding. This feels like a wedding that Big Willie would enjoy because he likes the guy. He's happy for his daughter. He's, enjoying this new phase in his life. He's made his money. He continues to make money. He's rich. He's healthy. His family is healthy. He's enjoying the time that he's got right now, and he's celebrating his daughter's wedding. Plus, he doesn't even have to really do anything. He just gave instructions. He didn't have to put up chairs or anything like that. He picked the place. I'm sure he picked Vegas because he's paying for it. And he's like, forget it. If I'm gonna pay for it, I'm gonna have fun. I'm gonna go to Vegas. I'm gonna blow all this money. It's gonna be a great time. And he's in his velour tracksuit, which is so early 2000s with the chains and everything. And Big Willie's energy, I don't think Big Willie would make a good dealer, but I would love to play on the table that Big Willie's on. But Big Willie plays his own way. I love it. His energy is infectious. He's having a great time. He is enjoying he's probably going to have a better time this weekend than his daughter and his new son-in-law are going to. But Sam goes up to Big Willie and asks if he's sure about the lobster thing. Everything is all set. Everything is set to go. We've got the arrangements. We got the fireworks.
So amazing.
Is Buble here?
He's here.
I want
Buble!
Yes, Buble, Big Willie, yes. And Sam is thinking about transferring the lobster over to Kobe beef, hand massaged, $300 per pound, which in today's money is $506.75 per pound. And if you're looking in the background, you can see Ed start to sidle up to just outside the high rollers area. He's seeing Sam try to lay this on thick to Big Willie, who, by the way, is trying not to be messed with while he's on a roll, especially while he's playing, especially while he's winning. But Sam is trying to hash off these 800 pounds of Kobe beef. And Big Willie's even thinking about it. He's thinking about the Kobe beef because the Kobe beef, is especially back then was the latest rage in food. Like you couldn't watch the Food Network without hearing something about Kobe beef. And he said he'll think about it. And Sam is going to leave him alone to consider the possibility that maybe they're going to switch off to Kobe beef. And Ed doesn't think so.
Think he's gonna go for it?
2-1 against.
I want lobster!
Okay. I want the jet.
Big Willie wants lobster. Sam wants the jet. And the show wants to move on to the next scene. I understand why Sam needs the jet. She needs to find herself some lobster at some points, which means she's got to leave Las Vegas to do it. So we see Mary and Jay walking the strip, both clad in black. That's a great shot of the two of them, especially against the gold of the Mirage in the background. That's with the cream trim all over the place. That's a great shot of the two of them. Plus, again, this is 2004 for both of them. They're both just attractive people. They look great together. And Mary, of course, is the sympathetic here because not only was she the first to actually believe Jay, although I think Delinda actually does believe Jay. She's just fighting believing Jay. But in any event, Jay and Mary stand there and they talk about the small stuff and letting it all go and living in the moment, etc., which is perfect timing because Jay, clearly not actually living in the moment, he set the whole thing up, walks Mary up to a street karaoke setup. And the karaoke guy even got a credit. Good for the karaoke guy to get a credit. And they're going to sing the first musical cue of this episode, Fly Me to the Moon, which, if you're listening on the original version, hey, Surreal, do you have the original version? No, I don't have the original version. No, I don't. I don't, FBI agents. I don't. No, you were not outsmarted. You are the best of all time. You should have shut down any any kind of way for any kind of consumer to get the original version of the art that they love so much, that they probably fell in love with to begin with, that has been stripped from all ways of us being able to procure it, other than having seen it in its original form, or having been lucky enough to tape it as it was airing. You're right for that. You're right for upholding all these laborious and terrible copyright laws that are plaguing content that are plaguing media consumption for the masses, and especially over recent years. You're right for that. Again, like I said before, nothing that is legal has ever been wrong, and nothing that is illegal has ever been right, and nothing that is right has ever been illegal, and vice versa. So you are right for that. However, if you are going to listen to and or watch the original version of this episode, I don't know why you would. I certainly don't. I certainly don't have it. I don't implore you to get that. But if you did, if you somehow did have it, again, somehow, if you did, the original version of Fly Me to the Moon that's in this episode is closer to Frank Sinatra's version, but it's sort of a hybrid of a couple different versions of the song. If you're watching on the DVD version, they just kind of loop in the Karaoke Legends version. So I'm a karaoke aficionado. I used to hang out at karaoke all the time. Matter of fact, my roommate was a KJ, and then I became a KJ for a minute. So yeah, I know, there's all different kinds of karaoke. There's karaoke where you go into a room. There's karaoke where you're in the bar and everybody sings around. There's the karaoke that's competition. There's all these different types of karaoke. In that, when you sing at a karaoke spot, the KJ very often has access to a couple different versions of the songs, because especially in recent years, nowadays, a lot of KJs kind of use the same semi ubiquitous system. Company, Carafun is the biggest, most popular one, because they managed to configure a way for you to not have to, so you can kind of get away from having to look up songs on a book, and you know what I mean? Especially in the height of the pandemic, they were able to kind of transition more into a digital format. But in the days of books, in the days of where the KJ actually had a file of the songs, it used to be CDs. Actually, it used to be cassettes. It used to be like tapes. Then it's CDs. Then it transitioned into files that you would have on like an external hard drive and you plug into your laptop. And now it's more along the lines of digital. You kind of log into a service, and if it's in that library, it works. But there are some KJs that still have the library on file. With that, there's different companies that created the karaoke songs. You see, so it's not just karaoke songs. No, there's like a couple of different companies that made them. One of the companies is Karaoke Legends. And so on the DVD version, Fly Me to the Moon that comes up is the Karaoke Legends version. Some versions are faster, slower. Some versions, when you sing karaoke, has better or worse instruments. Depending on the song, it may take out the rap verse. It may only be the rap verse. It may be the shortened version. You know what I mean? So that's another thing in terms of trying to find exactly what you're looking for. Karaoke, you kind of have to wing it sometimes, depending on who the KJ is. If you're watching on the streaming version, they did away with all that. They just slid in Michael Bublé's version of Fly Me to the Moon. But again, seemingly the karaoke version of Michael Bublé's version. So, or the backing tracks more specifically. So it's still the same song. It's slightly different versions depending on how you're listening to it. So Jay and Mary are singing Fly Me to the Moon. And have I mentioned lately how cute Mary is in almost everything that she's doing? Nikki Cox is amazing. She's incredibly cute up there singing the song. You can see the kind of nervousness, she doesn't really want to sing. She knows she's not a particularly good singer. Her facial expressions. She is just so adorable. And then Jay asks if she takes requests.
Take requests?
Oh, of course.
Make love to me.
I'm sorry, but I'm wearing this.
It's not a problem as long as you're not wearing anything else.
And we see them look up, and that's the cue for us to whoosh up to the jet. I like that exchange. That's a very good exchange. Again, this Jay guy is very similar to me. That sounds like a line I would use. But he's also, there's a sincerity in it too, and there's a charm to it too, that Mary, it almost seems like Mary is kind of considering this because she knows that Jay is, you know, a charming guy, and she looks up at him like, oh, you, like she, you know what I mean? Like, listen, Danny is the sexiest man in all of the sexiest city, in the sexiest land that is Las Vegas. He is the sexiest of the sexy. I know this because the writers have told us this over and over and over again. However, Jay doesn't seem to be that far behind. The guy's charming. Listen, the charm knows charm. Game recognized game. And I recognize Jay. I know who you are. I know you well, Jay. I know you very, very well. And so the two of them look up at the Montecito jet, and we whoosh into the jet, and we see Sam turn around, and she's on the phone requesting 1,000 Maine lobster, and she will be there within the hour, as she has hijacked the jet on this mission to hijack some of Big Willie's big whales. By the way, another acting note I like. At the end of that scene, let's go to the clip.
Yep, that's right. 1,000 Maine lobster. I'll be there within the hour.
The acting choice by Vanessa to do the little hiccup at the end of the drink, I like it. I like it a lot. So,
why don't you take a little break? Yeah, that's a good idea. You're gonna stretch the legs, wash the face, refocus. There you go.
The only way to tell you about the Not Literary podcast is to just have you listen.
I would say that that's like weird to keep a notebook, but I actually have a notebook with everybody I've slept with in it. I stopped keeping track probably like 5 years ago, but the reason behind it was because I assumed that when I eventually like caved and got married, I wanted to have a bachelorette party in a funeral home, and I wanted to invite everybody I slept with to do like a eulogy of my sex life and like tell a gross or funny story about sometimes that we were fucking. And I would lay in a coffin in like black lingerie, and then we would get ripped up wasted after. And then if I wanted to have any final flings before I actually tied the knot, I could sleep with somebody I'd already slept with, so that wouldn't count. That was my logic.
So if you want to hear more, just go to Spotify and search Not Literary. We go off and we see that Sam is actually in Santa Monica. Now, here's the thing. She can't have been... The timeline is screwed up with this. Jay and Mary are out singing, I assume, at night. Because even Vegas, the 24-hour city, the city that never sleeps, etc., all that stuff, is not... There's not going to be an audience like that early in the morning. There's probably not going to be any karaoke set up that'll allow themselves to set up in the middle of, you know, the strip like that on the street at 3 a.m. like that. You know what I mean? Even at the height of the coolest of Vegas, at early in the morning, to the point where when Sam gets off the plane, she's able to see this bright light of Santa Monica, California. That early in the morning, you're not going to get that kind of, if anybody's out, they're back out from a hotel room they went to or a late night club that they're just crawling out of, or the tables where they lost everything. There's walks of shame. By the way, I've told you, this is my favorite. Or have I told you? That's my favorite time to walk in Vegas. When the city is dead asleep, about to wake back up early in the morning, where half the lights are out on the strip, like they turn off half the lights already. You know what I mean? It's not as neon as it usually is, where the only people that are usually out are the homeless people, unfortunately, but also people on their walks of shame, and the performers and residents on the strip, who the only time they can, if they do like to work out in the natural environment, the only time that they really can do that is super early in the morning, because it's going to be super hot in the middle of the day. It's going to be super hot after really 8 o'clock on through till sundown again. So the only time they can really get that in is super early in the morning. So that's my favorite time of Vegas. I love seeing that. I love seeing cities while they're semi-sleep, and Vegas is a favorite of mine for sure. But so the timeline is off. But Sam is in Santa Monica. She's meeting with a fisherman who says that he's got, or who said that he had an in on some lobsters, but the fisherman says that he doesn't on account of Hurricane Ruth and the wicked swells that came up. Well, here's the thing. A, there was no Hurricane Ruth in 2004. The R designation, so hurricanes get a name per letter in the alphabet, and they only get one name per letter in the alphabet per year. That year, it was Richard, was R. And I don't know if Richard even made landfall, but it certainly wasn't Ruth. So there was no Hurricane Ruth. And actually, I haven't been able to find a Hurricane Ruth in the research that I did for the past, just a quick Wikipedia thing. So that's a made-up hurricane. But this made-up hurricane is causing real problems for Sam because she can't get her lobsters, even though she was told by this guy that she could get some lobsters. He tells her that nobody wants to leave the dock as far north as Maine. However, Sam, this tells you how desperate she was. She had to call in this favor from a guy who she also has a history with.
Sam.
Yes.
You dumped me. I was ready to propose.
No, I didn't think you were serious.
Of course Sam dumped this guy. Why wouldn't Sam dump this guy as soon as she felt like it? That's a very Sam thing to do if you really stop and think about it. So Sam, in her desperation, actually decides that she's going to try to make up with the guy. Kinda.
I showed you the ring.
I'll marry you if you give me 1,000 lobsters.
Very funny.
No, I'm serious. I'm madly in love with you. I can't live without you. Let's spend the rest of our lives together. Blah, blah, blah. That's our Sam. Here's the thing. I know, I know girls that would say stuff like that. That would do the. I know a Sam. I know a girl like that. And the minute that he can't provide the services that Sam needs, in this case the lobsters, she's out. And of course he knows that. He says figures. And we whoosh back into the casino, into Cup of Joe's, and it's Nessa being met by Jay and Danny, and they're trying to convince Nessa to do some skydiving. And she definitely doesn't want to do it. She says she would rather be at the beach until she is met with the prospect that the beach isn't exactly as safe as she thinks it is. As a matter of fact, if you go swimming in the water, there are sharks in the water. And sharks, if you get bit by one of those, well.
And if you get bit by one, besides the mind-blowing pain, your blood actually chums the water, which leads to a feeding frenzy with a whole bunch of other sharks. Yeah, it's a long, slow, painful death.
Oh, well, that's great. I'm never going in the ocean again.
Anything else?
No.
Huh?
I love that scene. That's a great scene with Nessa. I like how Nessa is very funny in this particular episode. Her resistance to Jay is pretty top tier. Jay tells her that life is all about risk, and the whole point is living in the moment. And it's kind of working. You can see it kind of working on Nessa. Her face is melting in that. Mary is met by the vegans once again, and they have a question about the all-you-can-eat buffet. But Mary assuages their fears by saying that there's vegan options, there's tofu options that will be marked off for them. Everything is according to plan, according to her. She is looking out for the vegans in every way possible, and that's amazing for them. They're almost satisfied. So then we cut to Danny and Mike going to the truck that they found where the lobsters were dropped off in. And Mike is a little hesitant because, Luis kind of looked the other way to the two of them going into the impoundment lot where the evidence is being held. But it turns out that the reason why they had to do it this way is because they couldn't find any evidence when the cops couldn't find any evidence when CSI dusted for it. But then Danny got Ed to get a hold of...
Whoa, a radiant spectrometer. I just read an article about this in Theoretical Science.
Yeah, radiant spectrometer is fake. I couldn't find anything on it. But I do love this interplay between Mike and Danny here where Mike busts Danny's chops a bit.
The only downside is if you're exposed to the radiation, your nads will glow green for 2 months.
I like that. We're building that relationship between the two of them. I like that brotherly camaraderie. I like that. But with the rating spectrometer, we do manage to find a footprint. So Mary's got Michael Buble in the theater again. It's obviously a different day. Mary's looking amazing in that outfit. And Buble has decided that maybe he shouldn't go with being a mime, because his voice is his instrument, you see. And he's got to find a way to use that instrument in a different way. And his way is stand-up. And Mary, here's the thing. Buble might actually be funny, because when Mary says,
Big Willie wants to hear you sing. I want to hear you sing.
You can buy one of my CDs.
That's a great exchange. That's a great line read by Buble. I love that. And Buble starts going into his routine, which is the very typical, especially at the time, it was considered hack for a comedian to talk about flying experiences. What is the deal with airline peanuts? Huh? They're not peas. They're barely nuts. And they're barely there. What is the deal? But we whoosh out of Vegas and into Harpswell, Maine, which is a real city. And Sam is there with a fisherman, a lobster fisherman. She is trying to get them to go out and fish for 1,000 lobster. And the thing is that with Hurricane Ruth coming in and the wicked swells, they don't want to do that. They don't want to put their guys in that kind of risk. If you've seen Deadliest Catch, you know what I'm talking about. They don't want to put their guys at that kind of risk. Well, here's the thing. Sam says that money is no object, and the fisherman says, sure, for $1 million, he'll go out and get them for him. Now, that $1 million in today's money translates to $1,689,158.28, or $1,689.16 per lobster that Sam is looking for. So we've moved a bit up in the world from the 100,000 she was originally trying to offer, and certainly from the $85 per plate. The fisherman tells her that the $1,000 a lobster is worth every penny, but Sam is trying to figure out how to get these guys out there, and she's not going to do it the money, but she is going to offer them something, an experience that they'll never forget. And the fishermen look at him and look at her, and they think they've come to an agreement. At the beginning of that, there was a cool exchange between the two of them where the fisherman, and this is a running theme that's been coming up a couple of times recently, where we remember that from when Hans and Franz from the last episode were talking about Sam, and Sam is a woman, kind of, sort of. The fisherman who talked with Sam and even knows that her name is Samantha Jane Marquez said that he expected her to be bigger and burlier. The perception of Sam's perception precedes her. And remember, it was from the pilot episode too. Danny thought that Sam was a guy too. So we're still keeping on that thread of the perception of Sam being that of a cutthroat guy, which is working to Sam's benefit. Jay's history of practical jokes isn't working to his benefit in getting Delinda on board with the making love to him before he dies campaign until something's happening as they're walking.
Look, I'm sorry you don't believe me, but I see a white light.
All right, well, that didn't work either. But it's a good demonstration of this guy, Jay, and we see Danny walk up to him and help him up and ask him if this dying of cancer thing really works, and Jay tells him that, yeah, it does. There's a lot of stuff that you'd be surprised works with women, and don't necessarily listen to what is talked about on the internet. Some stuff is tried and true all the way through. Danny helps Jay up and they move on. Meanwhile, Mary and Delinda are walking through the casino, and Mary, despite what's going on with the one thing that she's got to get figured out, this is the biggest thing on her plate right now, is Michael Buble and getting him to sing and hearing him sing. That is occupying her time right now. Despite that, and despite the fact that Buble seems to be doing anything and everything but singing for her, she's got a smile on her face. She's going to look on the bright side of life. And Delinda peeps out that Mary's been hanging out with Jay, and she gets a little frustrated and decides she's got to do something about it. She goes up to Ed's office, and she tries to get him kicked out of the casino. By the way, Delinda, just as a quick aside, she does look great in this episode. Especially the scene, that outfit is tremendous on her. But as she goes to the office and she talks to Ed, Ed tells her that she needs to sit down. And I think, and this is another clue that maybe Delinda knows she's been trying to avoid it. And I think this kind of temper tantrum to try to get Jay kicked out is still trying to avoid it. She doesn't want to hear the words. And she knows she's about to hear the words, especially coming from Ed, who's in the serious tone, who's serious Ed right now when he tells her to sit down.
Daddy, I don't want to sit down.
Stop with the daddy stuff and sit down.
You could hear in the lines leading up to that, Delinda's voice not as sure as they were originally. And I think she's been running from it for a while. I think she didn't want to admit it. And now she's going to be confronted with it up front. Because Ed actually did look up Jay's health records. And you can see Delinda's face as she sits down. She knows. Delinda already knows. She's been trying not to admit it to herself. But she already knows that Jay is telling the truth. And she already knows that Jay... And she even tries to scoff it off one more time by talking about how Jay put the principal's car on the roof. But she knows. And she knew she knew. And she's still trying to fight it, but Ed tells her flat out that, yeah, he's dying.
Jay's dying, honey.
So with that said, we whoosh back to the casino, and it is dark outside, so I'm guessing the timeline now is super early in the morning, that timeline that I was talking about, where the timeline of Vegas that I love so much, like 3, 4 in the morning, where it's super dark out before the sun comes up. And Sam says that she's crisscrossed across the country, and in 12 hours, she's throwing a wedding. So yeah, that probably is about right. It probably is about midnight, 1 o'clock, probably 1, 2, maybe, probably 2-ish. 2 to 3-ish in 12 hours. Sounds about right. You could do a wedding in like 3. So she says she's got about 3 hours to eat, sleep, and shower, which again sounds about right. Get up early to get appointments and all that other stuff. Yeah, it's probably right. It's probably about 3-ish in the morning as we're watching this scene, and she's met by Jay. And Jay's reputation precedes him. Because he just tells Sam straight out that she needs to get laid. But Sam has been through 2 incarnations of dealing with her past love life just to get these lobsters with the chef whose boyfriend Sam stole at the engagement party. We don't know if this other guy is the betrothed to that chef, but it is another chapter in Sam's love life where the guy was ready to propose to her and she ditched him immediately. So Sam says that getting laid is going to go into all these feelings, but Jay says, no, it's not.
Actually, I'm dying of cancer, which means no long-term commitment, no emotional aftermath, and no one's ever going to know because dead men tell no tales.
So you're the perfect one-night stand.
Exactly.
And the scene cuts pretty quick. So we go back into surveillance, and we see Mike running the computer through the footprint, but they can't find anything on it. There's no maker model with any major shoe manufacturer in the world. Any major shoe manufacturer in the world. We immediately cut to a cliff. And again, remember Jay's list? He sang over Venice, though it was Las Vegas's version of Venice. And he saw the sunrise. He saw the Vegas sunrise. It is daytime now. So again, I think the timeline's give or take about right. It was somewhere around 3-ish, maybe 4 if you want to push it. And they saw the sunrise as they were greeting the early morning, let's just say. And I love this scene. This is a great Sam scene. She gets up from their encounter and says that's exactly what she needed. Jay with the perfect line read here. And by the way, this is kind of a clue. We're going to come back to this. I'm going to enjoy the humor of this. We're going to come back to this moment. Jay asks if there's any chances of a cuddle. And Sam, this is maybe the best Sam line ever. When she says,
Don't ruin the moment.
That's great. And then walks. That's tremendous. That's tremendous. I'm pretty sure she has no regard for how Jay's going to get back either. I'm pretty sure she's just taking off on her own. And poor Jay, he's there having to wash his face off. He's so taken aback. Speaking of washing their face off, we got the Kings. They're over by the pool. This is the pool that was, looks like it was the pool that was used for the surf contest in the second episode. That it looks very similar to it. And so they're sitting back, and you could tell that these chairs, I think this might be a setup. This might be at Mandalay Bay, because those chairs look like they've been actually used on a property. They don't look TV ready. There's a couple scuffs there, you know what I mean? Like there's a little uneven on it. They look more real. Those chairs that the boys are sitting on look more real and less stage proppy. And I like that. I do like that aspect. So the Kings are sitting there and they're talking about relaxing by the pool after spending too much time in surveillance. And boy, the time that they're having at the pool and the view that they're having is amazing. Mike just happens to say they're in a natural environment with no predators. And that clues Danny in on something. That's Danny's aha moment. Now, Mike has had some aha moments in the last couple episodes. Listen to Mike. Mike has been right on the money. So I like this. You got to kind of balance this out a little bit more between the two of them. Mike can't be right all the time. Danny's been right. You got to balance out who's more right. You got to have some, one part of the team get it. Because I was going to say Danny was right most of the time, but a lot of time in the early part, especially of the first season, Ed was the one who was really solving stuff. Danny was just kind of there watching. So I like the kind of balance that they're trying to establish here, that the writers are trying to establish here. We cut back into the theater, and it's Buble spinning plates. Buble is spinning 8 plates in front of Mary. They're still up there, though, and Mary is looking less than impressed because, let me tell you, spinning plates was a quote-unquote talent that popped up, I think, in like the 70s, maybe the 60s, on like variety TV shows. And it's impressive when you think about the technique, but it's boring. It's not great to look at, you know what I mean? And there's a reason it fell out of favor. And I'll give it to Buble. Michael Buble in this show is very talented. He's able to do it, but Mary does not care. In that Buble segment, the musical cues there are, if you're watching the DVD version, the song is Kalinka by Tibor Bornai is the version that came up when I looked that up. You've heard that song before. Bum, 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 bum. It's not the Tetris thing, but it's a Russian, kind of dance number that kind of picks up. Traditional. You've heard it a bunch. On the streaming version and the original, the song you're hearing is Guyane excerpts from the ballet suites Sabre Dance Suite 3, number 5. Basically, it's colloquially known as the song, the Saber song of the Sabers, Battle of the Sabers, something along those lines. You've heard that before too, and that's ironically enough in the streaming and the original version. So that's another one of those things where DVD decided to go a different path, streaming version decided to go another different path, which is weird in this one because both of them are really traditional songs. Like I don't know what copyright issue they would have had in using a version of that song on the DVD. I would imagine it's fair use at this point. That song, both of those songs have been used ad nauseum on a whole bunch of different things. I don't think there's much of a copyright on those, if any. Delinda is back in Ed's office, and she's got stacks of papers. She went to UNLV to try to get Jay into a study, and Ed is like, don't you think he's been through all that? But Sam fires back with,
Jay will be fine. I'll make sure of it.
And you can see that she's been crying. She's got at least a tear or two on her face in dealing with this. So now that Delinda's not running from it anymore, she's running into it. she's fighting it. She's running headlong into it. She says she can't run away from it anymore. She's going to try to beat it. She's going to try to defeat it. This is Delinda's pathway through this. So I wonder if this was the writer's way of trying to get Delinda to go through the steps of grief. You know, you've all heard those before. Those are tropes of TV as well. Anger, bargaining, denial, acceptance, and I forget what the other one is. Ed is trying to break it down to her, but she is going to go headlong in. She feels like she's going to try to Delinda her way through this. And I don't think that that's necessarily going to work. And neither does Ed. And he and Delinda sit down and they have one of, if not the most touching father-daughter moment that they've had on the show so far, in my opinion. Ed breaks down to her how it felt to be on some of those missions and to kind of accept the aspect that the prospect that you won't be going home. And no matter, you could cry, you could pray, you could do whatever you want, but ultimately you have to accept what happens. And Delinda, even in that, is trying to fight him, saying that Jay is just on vacation. He's not trying to fight it. He's not doing anything. And she doesn't want to give up. And Ed is just trying to talk her through that process of, you know, what's going to happen is going to happen. And Delinda, in a very poignant moment, to me, asks Ed if he ever had to make peace. And this is a great reading here by James Caan, what he says.
How about you? Did you ever have to make your peace?
Well, I just, I didn't have to. I had something, a lot stronger. I had this little girl back home who needed me and just made me feel like I was bulletproof.
And that's a real thing. That is a real thing that happens with guys that are in that kind of line of work, in those kinds of situations, and they have something to fight for. I do remember a story my father told me, former cop, former government man, about the first time he got shot at. And all he thought about in that moment was the people who loved him. Now, mind you, this is before I came along, so the person he was thinking of at that point was his mom. But yeah, he was thinking about those people in that moment and how he wasn't about having to get out of that moment for himself. It was about having to get out of that moment for those people that loved him. And that's not an odd thing. That's a real thing. And this is a very touching moment between Delinda and Ed, and really between Molly and James. And Molly, again, at this point, this is amazing growth as an actress from the start of the series, where she's sitting here crying. It's real. It feels real. And the bond between between Delinda and Ed really shines through here, regardless of what we've heard about Molly and James maybe not initially getting along when they first got together on the set. They're working together now, and it really works. And it works in the moment, and it works as a father-daughter moment, because even after that speech, it doesn't just wrap up with the speech and then that's it. It feels realer because they leave this little bit of dialogue in there where Ed checks in on Delinda. Like a lot of people with emotional resonance, emotional maturity nowadays would. He asks her, do you want to sit and talk? Do you want to just sit here? What do you need from me? You know what I mean? He's there for her in that moment of, what can I do for you now that we've had this discussion? And they sit and they, you know what I mean? And Delinda doesn't necessarily need anything at that moment, but, she does go off afterwards. And I like that moment. That is, to me, maybe the most touching moment between Delinda and Ed so far in the series. And it's up there. It's up there. The hospital scene, Groundhog Summer, thinking about it now, is probably still the most emotional. It's probably still the most... There was a different energy there, though. There was a sense of urgency. There was a different dichotomy there as well. You could see the kind of vulnerability with Ed. But trying to compare apples to apples, it's up there. It's probably up there with the most emotional moments between the two of them, and I like seeing that. We break the tension a little bit with the Kings going over the footprint again, and they've realized that they were going over the major shoe brands, but not the specialty brands. And they go over the specialty brands, and they realize it's a vegan line. And so all eyes point to the PAR participants here at the Montecito. And we track down to the feet of, it's our guy, Larry. And he sees security coming. And it's funny how he knows security's coming after him. He sees them. He knows that they're coming after him. He knows who they are. It's interesting. They've really never had any interaction this whole time, other than maybe he recognized Danny. But Danny obviously didn't recognize him or see him when the truck was being taken off. Actually, if I'm remembering right, I don't know how he couldn't have been the only guy involved in this, because at the beginning, if you remember, he was talking to Mary very close to when the lobster truck got taken in the casino. Realistically, I don't think there's much of a way that he would have been able to, unseen, get to the loading dock and do all that by himself. There had to have been accomplices. We don't hear or see about the accomplices at all in this episode, so if they're involved, they got away with it scot-free. I don't know how we don't even discuss how he did any of it. We just pin it on him in this moment, and he starts taking off. We're going to leave that alone because, we've already gone this far without thinking about it, so why think about it? So as our boy Larry's trying to get away, he runs right into Ed's fists, who straight up asks him where the lobsters are. And we cut to Mystique, which is closed, but apparently Jay's got easy access because he's Jay, or Delinda's let him in. And I don't know if it's closed, maybe it's open, but just barely. He's taking pain pills with the beer. And they're powerful pain pills because he's at the end stages of cancer. Delinda now believes him, now that she's got fundamental proof. And again, I think she's believed him for a lot longer. She's just admitting to believing him. And they joke about him trying to get her to sleep with him. And they slow dance one more time in Mystique to the music. The music that's playing, by the way, if you're watching on the DVD version, the song that's playing is a production song. Don't know how to find it. It's a production song that goes something along the lines of, "Where do we go from here? I just got to say, where do we go from here?" I couldn't find it on any of the apps. If you're watching on again, this is another song where the streaming version and the original version have the same song. The song is Untold by Pete Francis, and apparently when looking up that song, it was used prominently on One Tree Hill. Now, I think One Tree Hill was on around the same time as Las Vegas. I don't know which show used it first. To me, it was used on Las Vegas first because, it's Las Vegas. I'm not even going to look up One Tree Hill because I don't really care that much. But the two of them start talking about Jay's cancer prognosis and how they go through more of the tropes of the man dying of cancer TV trope. Why aren't you in a hospital? Why don't you do this? Because everybody else does that. What are you, why do you look so good? Why do you not look like somebody who's dying of cancer? All that stuff. And they kind of gloss past it because he wants to live life to the fullest, and there's not much they can do for him in the hospital. Jay reiterates that he doesn't know what he's going to do after Vegas because Vegas was his end of to-do list. He doesn't know what he doesn't know what comes after Vegas. Keep that in mind. So Jay puts up the proposal again for Delinda to make love, to have sex with him. And she again brushes it off, but she's brushing off his sincere feelings. And again, this is another reason why I say I kind of identify with Jay. Now, mind you, I don't have cancer at the moment that I know of, but I identify with Jay because he's so charming and he uses humor so much, and he's got that smile and he's got that smirk, and he kids around so much that when he does actually reveal, and he's probably run from real feelings for a long time, you know what I mean? So that when he does actually reveal it, when he does get into that sentimental bag, the person that he is trying to, he's almost the boy who cried wolf, the person that he's trying to convey these feelings to the most, that he's most sincere with in this moment. I mean, and he's sincere. He is sincere through a lot of this. He's just joking through the sincerity too. You can be sincere and joke about it at the same time. A lot of people don't necessarily catch on to that. And the problem is that Delinda in these moments are still kind of brushing him off as if he doesn't really mean it, as if we can get into that in a little bit, but you can see the look on Jay's face, like he believes this. He wants Delinda to be his last. He wants to make love to her one time before he dies. And he really means it. He really means that he's compared Delinda to every woman he's been with since then. He really means it. She doesn't buy it. And maybe part of that is she doesn't want to buy it, because again, that would be still giving more into the finality of his life. She just barely stopped trying to get him into medical programs 5 minutes ago. So maybe that's part of it, but I think there's something else there. We'll get into that a little bit later. But she walks off, leaving Jay in the middle of Mystique in sort of this dim lighting, and it's a very poignant moment as the song fades out and fades to black.
D, my dying wish.
Don't leave me on that old black road.
Let's let the dealer shuffle the deck for a second and we'll be right back. Is your ride missing something?
You know, I can do a few things under this hood.
Well,
Give this baby a boost.
Do not
All I'm
go
saying
there,
is,
Mike.
How about a top-to-bottom detail at great prices?
Can you actually do that?
Yeah, I can do it.
Okay.
If you're in the LA area, the place to go is Ease Clean Fast Car Wash. Let Eric take care of your car like it was his own.
Welcome to the family.
Schedule an appointment now by going to tinyurl.com/ecleanfast. That's tinyurl.com/ecleanfast. Or text 323-399-3674. That's 323-399-3674. We go to a shot of the Vegas cityscape back into interrogation, and the Kings are sitting there talking to Larry, who the par guy, who has made it his mission. He said that him hearing about those lobsters and what was going to happen to them, he knew it was a call to action, and he just couldn't sit quiet. And he sits there, and Vegas is just the worst kind of killing fields.
They pay homage to Vegas's Murderers Row. Emerald, Wolfgang Puck, Gunther, and Bobby Flay.
I feel like Bobby Flay's gotten a couple shots over the season or so, but I do like the fact that he mentioned Gunther. Again, I like them mentioning Gunther as one of the preeminent chefs in Vegas. I do like that, even though we haven't seen him in a while. I can't wait to see Gunther again. I love me a Gunther episode. Ed comes in and he needles Larry a little bit.
Have you ever heard a lobster scream?
Personally, no. But I have dipped their tails in warm butter, and it's quite tasty.
Murderer.
First off, yes, I guess lobsters do scream. That's the squeak you hear when you put them in the pot. I've never had a lobster alive. I've done lobster tail before. Lobster tail is very good. I will say that, especially with the drawn butter and stuff. I did it grilled. It was really good. I haven't done it in a while, though. I need to figure out I haven't done it in a while. Anyway, Ed decides he's going to leave Larry just kind of sitting there stewing in his juices again. And we cut to Mystique, and Mary and Delinda are talking about the Jay situation. And Delinda brings up that Jay has a couple things on his list, and he wants Delinda to help him with one of those things on the list.
He asked you to sleep with him, didn't he?
Now, keep this in mind. That's That's an interesting exchange right there, because Mary didn't say make love to him. Mary said sleep with him. That's interesting for Mary. And maybe that is indicative of how she feels Jay's intentions are, because Delinda goes off to talk about how she's his dying wish, but Mary says that he asked her and Nessa and Sam as well. And that brings a look on Delinda's face. I have issues with this part. Especially now. I have issues with this part and Delinda's reaction to it. But we'll go into that when we dip into this later, when we get to the end here. Delinda goes to Jay's room, and Jay's packing for the skydiving. She says that she's given a lot of thought and that the answer is no. Jay seemingly takes it in stride. Delinda has a pretty good point here when she says that,
but you never once asked me how I felt about you.
Now, mind you, the guy's dying of cancer. He can be a little selfish. He has a little room to be a bit selfish at this stage in the game. But that's a fair point. That is a fair point. He did not ask Delinda about how she felt in that moment. He did not ask Delinda about any of it. He just went ahead and tried to carpe diem it. And Jay again is trying to sell the thing that friends do anything for each other. And Delinda says, "Don't you think a going away lay will cheapen it?" I have problems with this dialogue and with the sentiment and with who's saying it. I have issues with it. But Jay comes along and says,
I don't want to get laid. I want to make love to the most beautiful woman in the world.
Okay, let's talk about that. Remember how I said it's interesting how Mary didn't say make love? It's also interesting how Jay did say make love. Jay just said he wants to make love to Delinda. And we've talked about this, and this really isn't canon. It really comes from Vanessa Marcel's DVD track of talking about how Mary says make love in the elevator with the night the lights went out in Vegas. And that kind of keeps the thread going. And actually, I think it kept the thread going a lot during the Las Vegas, the series days as well, which I found a workaround for. You can actually find some interesting stuff there. Anyway, but that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But Jay does say it here. He specifically says he wants to make love to the most beautiful woman in the world. And to him, the most beautiful woman in the world is Delinda. She is very beautiful. And Delinda asks, is that why you said it to the rest of the queens? And Jay laughs a little bit and tries to play it off with a joke. Again, you know, to the end, I get it. That's his personality. That's his personality. I get it. But he's still being sincere. You can joke and still be sincere. There's sincerity in the jokes. A lot of times people just don't necessarily want to hear it or don't know how to hear it. But there's definitely sincerity in those jokes. And Jay says to her that he's dying and he's desperate. And he wants to do everything while he's still here. He doesn't want to die with any regrets. And she just says that she can't do it. And he breaks down a little bit more because he remembers them being able to talk back in high school. And he hasn't had anybody to talk to. He wanted to talk to Delinda about this stuff. And they never really did. And part of that is because he was chasing her around the casino and she was saying no to him and all this other stuff. But also there is a different type of conversation you have after you make love to someone. There's a different conversation that you have after you have sex with someone. There's a different conversation you have after you just do a quick lay. There's all of those kinds of versions of copulation have different conversations that happen at the end of them. And they're different than a conversation you have before that or instead of that. They're different conversations. They're more intimate conversations in that moment. And I think if you're not just talking about conversations, he's had conversations. I think he's looking, and remember, again, when he was at the cliffs with Sam, and he joked, "Do you want to cuddle?" I don't know how much of a joke that really was. I think he knew in that moment that Delinda wasn't going to say yes. So if he was going to have that conversation with somebody, it was going to have to be with Sam. However that conversation was going to go down, even though he sold her on the prospect of not having to have any deep conversations, just getting right down to it. I think that may have been his sly way of trying to have some semblance of that in that moment while he could. You know, the same way that he couldn't exactly sing at Venice, but he sang at Venice in Vegas. I think that was his kind of roundabout way of kind of doing that. Him and Delinda share one final kiss.
Well, you're not gonna break my nose again, are you? My first kiss and my last.
And that's the end of that scene. I have issues. We'll come back to it. We cut to the tables with Big Willie and his daughter and his new son-in-law, and everything in the wedding was perfect. The lobsters were delicious and fresh. Big Willie doesn't have as many chips on his table. Apparently he's down $600,000, which in today's money is $1,013,494.97. But he's incredibly happy. And that's Sam's job. And that's, again, the infectious nature of Big Willie. So Sam is met by the fishermen from Maine who came through for her on the lobsters.
And all you had to do was comp my stack. That's not all I had to do. You didn't.
Again, another throwback, another callback to the idea that Sam goes the quote-unquote extra mile for her clients. How far is that extra mile? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. There's no we don't know what that extra mile is, but we still have not seen Sam go that extra mile for one of her clients. Now, there was one client she did go the extra mile with, but I don't think that was because of that. I think there was just that attraction there and she lost her head. But she got it back. And the extra mile she had to go through to get these fishermen on board to do the lobster job was they're here to sing Buble sing. Buble! I like how they all go off on Buble chants like it's a soccer game or a football game. You know what I mean? It's great. It's fantastic. Sam doesn't know what happened to the lobsters. We're going to find out. Apparently, we're at the Mandalay Bay Shark Aquarium. And this is interesting. On IMDb, it has a note on it about chlorine. I couldn't find anything that says there was chlorine in this water. Why? You shouldn't have chlorine with fish anyway. But we meet Glenn Schaefer, who at the time, at least, was the CEO of Mandalay Group. And it turns out our boy Larry had tried to free, quote-unquote, the lobsters into this shark tank, which I don't know if sharks eat lobster, but they probably would at least try it if they were in their midst, in their tank. Obviously, since there's no oceans nearby, the closest thing is probably a lake. I don't know how lobsters would survive in a lake, so our boy tried to drop them off there. But unfortunately, what our animal activist didn't know was that he was actually endangering the sharks that were in the tank, because everything that goes in that tank has to be cleared has to make sure that they don't have different biomes and stuff that affect the water, etc. And so they had to find some way to deal with the lobster. And jointly,
The Mandalay Bay and the Montecito Resort bring you Lobster Fest. All you can eat.
So that's the end of our poor animal activist friend, who, again, for the life of me, he didn't mention any accomplices. I would think he would have to have some accomplices to pull that off, especially that fast. He was still in the casino, but we're not talking about that. The episode's almost over. We see Ed talk to Buble about his adventures with Mary, who comes up to them, and apparently it was a whole thing. Mary was nice through Buble in the Bubble, through the spinning plates and everything. So apparently Ed made a bet with Buble.
And this one time I was telling him I know the coolest girl. And he doubted that because that's the way he is. And so we made a bet. And I said, I'll bet you there's nothing you can do that would make this girl lose her temper. And there you go.
I hope it's okay. I signed it.
That's an interesting bet. And apparently Ed won. He was right. He was 1,000% right about Mary. All that for a signed CD for Jillian, who already had the CD and knew it by heart. It was a good CD. It had very high re-listenability. I gotta say, Bublé's CD stayed in my car CD player for a long time, I must say. So I get why Jillian would know the whole routine. It was great. And he's also apparently going to come back to the Montecito next summer during his national tour. But of course, it's during the summer, so we're not going to see Buble again on Las Vegas, unfortunately, which is a shame. I liked him here. I liked the personality that he showed. I imagine that he's good at stuff like this. He probably was more focused on his music than doing a lot of acting, which is why he didn't have a whole lot of acting in his IMDb. It's mostly, him being himself on something else. But he's good. He was really good. He was really funny in those segments.
What if you lost?
Would have given him one of my CDs.
Now here's the thing. I looked this up. James Caan has actually sung in different productions over the years, including most notably in Funny Girl. So technically, if he wanted to, he could give Buble a copy of the Funny Girl soundtrack and hear James Caan singing. James Caan never released any actual albums or anything that I could find, which, a lot of actors do. Sheryl Lee Ralph has a background in singing, so there's some CDs, there's some albums that she's made. I don't know how available a lot of them are, but it happens. It definitely happens. Most notably and recently, I realized I found out that Robert Guillaume, a.k.a. Rafiki from The Lion King, had at one point a disco album. Amazing. You can find James Caan singing, but we see Michael Bublé singing, and it's Come Fly With Me on all incarnations, his version of Come Fly With Me. I think my favorite version of Come Fly With Me, honestly, is Bublé's. I like the other versions. I really like Bublé's version. I sing Bublé's version on karaoke. Every time I've gone back through this episode and it comes to this point, I instinctively sing along with it. Again, it's got a lot of re-listenability to it. It's very good. You see his band right behind him, and they're great. And we cut to Nessa and Danny and Jay in the flight above as they're about to go skydiving. And Jay gives one final instruction to Nessa.
Nessa, if your chute doesn't open, hold up your left hand.
Why?
In case anybody on the ground wants your watch.
Oh, ha ha!
So we cut back to the concert, and Mary and Ed are two-stepping along with Buble, and we get a really cool shot here, and I don't know who to give this up to, the cinematographer, the director, or both, where we see Delinda kind of chroma screen into the clouds, almost saying goodbye to Jay, almost like an angel, almost probably like how Jay saw her.
Rarefied, we'll just fly.
And the pilot tells our crew in the air that it's time to go ahead and dive. They've reached the dive area. Jay looks at the city one more time, looks back at our people, thanks them for everything, and says,
"Been one hell of a trip.
It's such a lovely day. Just say the words and we'll beat those birds and I will go babe.
Jay!
It's perfect for a flying honeymoon, they say."
Danny and Nessa watch as Jay takes off. Danny laughs. Nessa doesn't know what to think. She looks up at Danny like, "Are you crazy?" She gives a little bit of a smile, but she doesn't know what to think. And especially because at that moment, she's the one who's known Jay the most, growing up with Delinda. But she doesn't know what to think in that moment right now. And of course, that means that that's the end of Jay. We're not going to see Jay again on Las Vegas, and that's a shame. I really liked him. And our crew, specifically the Queens, are coalescing at Belisara. Delinda talks about how Jay wanted to sleep with him or her as well as the other ones, and she asks the other ones if they did or not. Nessa says she didn't, of course not. Mary holds up her ring. Mary holds up her engagement ring and then looks over at Danny. You know, again, they're still together. And then Sam is asked, and she doesn't realize that the boys have come into the picture now.
He's hot and he's dying. Of course I did him.
Oh, Sam. And she looks up and she hears that Ed is the one who responded with,
Well, I guess he went out in style, huh?
And there is that kind of, again, that familiar feeling. There is that kind of feeling like she just said something like that in front of her father. Even though there's no relation, he's just the boss. Like, they don't know, you know what I mean? But I like that with this crew, that keeps establishing that. That keeps establishing that connection between them, which in turn establishes that connection with us, the audience. Sam says that it was fine when asked by Danny, but I think it was probably better than that. And Delinda says that she bets that Jay smiled the whole way down.
Well, I'm guessing there was a point where he had to quit smiling.
Sorry. Dad.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hold it down.
It's not funny.
Yeah, sorry.
And that brings a chuckle from everybody else there, a groan from Nessa. But yeah, and but they're able to get away with that in that scene because of who Jay was. They've established Jay that whole episode. They've established how he wanted to go out. He said part of living is how you die and how you want to die. And he went out on his own terms. And I give that to Jay. He went out on his own terms. I appreciate that about him and that character. That is an amazing thing to see. And it does encourage some people to do in those type situations to figure that out. Now you heard me talk about it. I have issues with a lot of how the episode went down. I feel like there were some compromises made, right? So Sam sleeps with Jay. I feel like that's a compromise so that Jay actually does get to fulfill that wish on his bucket list. So Jay fulfilled all the wishes on his bucket list. The skydiving, the singing, the sunrise, the last sex, right? With one of the most beautiful women in the world. He wanted Delinda, though. And he really loved Delinda. And he really did want and love Delinda. And they had Delinda, of all people, of all the queens of the Montecito. Mary not giving in, fine, great. That makes total sense. Nessa not giving in, sure, that also makes sense. You know, the guy essentially dated her sister. Okay. Sam giving in, that also makes sense. But you know what also makes sense? Delinda giving in. You know what also makes sense? Not even giving in. Delinda making love to one of her first boyfriends makes sense. Who's dying makes sense. The idea that Delinda Devine, the same Delinda Devine who had a fling with Danny, brought it into the Montecito just for kicks because she was bored, right? Who we've established is a party, who serious, smart, but serious when she has to be, but as a party girl, wouldn't do that. It started to make less and less sense. And then when she was talking about in the hotel room, don't you think it would cheapen it? Don't you think it would cheapen it? We have seen, and I believe we'll see Delinda in other frivolous relationships with Jean-Claude Van Damme, the guy after Jean-Claude Van Damme at the end of that very same episode. You know what? There's been a handful of episodes, a handful of times in the last few episodes leading from the last season into this one, where I feel like the continuity, the thinking process of Delinda, how they've written her in some of these, especially compared to how they would write her later and how they established her earlier on, doesn't exactly track. Also, I don't understand why she couldn't or wouldn't. I wonder if that was a network thing, if the network said, no, Delinda can't for some reason. You know how networks get iffy about sex between, even though it's a whole nother, and she started the series on top of Danny, but for some reason now, I don't know, there's no good reason, is what I'm trying to say, why Delinda couldn't and wouldn't and or shouldn't have granted Jay's final wish. There's no reason not to. Oh, it would cheapen it. What? Coming from Delinda, what? Our friendship, what? So you're just gonna leave him hanging, literally? And also, he poured his heart out to you, and he communicated to you the way he knows how to communicate to you and with other people, with jokes and lightheartedness. He touched everybody in the Montecito that he talked to. He brightened people's day. Matter of fact, Delinda wanted to kick him out when he managed to brighten Mary's day for some reason. It was a weird, it was a weird kind of strange way that they wrote Delinda in this episode. It's not as off kilter as some of the other episodes, but it's still kind of like, why though? Like, there's no, you could even do the conflict through the episode where she's wrestling with the emotions. You could make it a beautiful moment where she's like, I will grant you this last wish or whatever. You could make it a beautiful moment on par with the beautiful moment of Danny and Mary, Danny's last episode of season 1. Always Faithful. You can make it on par with that. But instead, we have her scrimping and squirming and hemming and hawing and I don't know and Ida and all these made up silly dumb excuses, and I don't understand why they had to write Delinda to the point where she doesn't grant this last wish, which doesn't seem like it's wild and out of completely left field. Like, people go back to their exes from high school all the time for worse reasons than this. Or for no reason whatsoever. Especially now, in today's age, you can go all the way back to junior high if you need to. I don't know. I don't like the way they handled the Delinda J thing. I like everything else about the episode. I love Buble. Buble! I love Big Willie. Big Willie is a huge plus in this episode. And you know what? I almost feel like it's a trend, and it's gonna sound like it's a trend. Like, he's just hating on Delinda because he doesn't like Delinda because he's a dairy shipper. He's more team Mary and Danny, not team D&D. I like Delinda as a character, by and large. I don't like the way she's been written in a handful of the last however many episodes since I've complained about her last. You know what I mean? Like, there's some issues that come up, and they seem to come up more frequently around Delinda's character than other people's characters. And I pointed out other instances where they come up, some inconsistencies that come up, some inconsistencies. Just last episode, I talked about Mike and his little bit zealous loyalty to Ed and not believing that Ed is capable of doing the things he's accused of. I've talked about inconsistencies in Ed's character. But there seem to be more, and I've talked about Danny. So really on par, you're talking about probably Danny and or Delinda that have the continuity issues, the core of their character issues that have come up in recent episodes. So that's my main issue with this episode here. But I love Big Willie. I love Buble. I like the fisherman. I like Sam having to go all over to find the lobsters. I like a lot of the other aspects of it. Buble is very funny. I like Mary's exasperation with him. I like that. And again, even in this episode, I like that tender moment between Ed and Delinda. And no, that wasn't just because of James Caan. Molly Sims was in that scene too, and she was in that scene too. I like that. And I like seeing the little changes in Delinda along the way of that journey. I would have liked Delinda in this episode by and large had it been a different result. I don't know why they felt the need to not have that happen with her and Jay. I feel like that was the worst payoff. I feel like that was the lesser payoff. The payoff should have been Jay and Delinda. They actually do make love. Then Jay does the skydiving thing. I didn't like the way they paid that off. It felt like we had a good lead up, a good back and forth. Again, I connected with Jay a lot in this episode. I really like Jay. I really identify a lot with Jay. But, you could have paid it off. There was no reason not to pay that off, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know if it was a network note or something. Factoring all those things, and everybody else gave it a just under 8. Factoring all those things in, I think I'm going to have to hang it up onto an 8, but barely an 8. I wanted to do it like an 8.5, because I really do like a lot of aspects of this episode. But the more I thought about it, that ending with Delinda and Jay, they could have been back. They didn't. I don't like that. I don't like how they did that. I don't like how they did that. They should have paid that off. To me, they should have paid that off. So I'll give it a solid 8. Again, I'm thinking about it. I was like, oh, this is an 8.5 episode. This is a really good episode. It was a really good. All the other stuff was so strong that it almost makes me. I almost want to do 8, but they missed the dunk. They missed the dunk. So it'll have to settle at an 8 for me. But my opinion doesn't matter. We've talked about this before. My opinion is just one opinion. It does not matter. Your opinion is the one that matters. So, with that said, I need you to tell me what you thought of this episode in all the avenues you can tell me about. You can tell me about it via Facebook, via the Las Vegas group. You can tell me about it via Twitter, via, what are the other ones? All the other ones. Tell me about it on all the other ones, and we will go from there. Like the podcast, however you're listening to it, that helps with the algorithm. That helps let the algorithm know to let people about it, let people know about it. Share it also is a big thing. Let people know about it. Let creators know about it too. There's another unofficial, actually there were 2 as of recording this week, unofficial friends of the podcast, one of which, Dean Devlin, executive producer of Leverage. I saw you liking that post of the headcanon of Bob into Elliot Spencer. Dean Devlin, you need to get a hold of GST and make that happen, baby. Unofficial friend of the show. Keyword unofficial. Another unofficial friend of the show, Spencer Garrett, who popped up liking and reposting the poll question on whether he is your VIP for episode 2 of season 2, The Count of Montecito. Go ahead and vote in that poll wherever you see it. If you do still see it by the time this episode comes out, which you should somewhere. I think the place that keeps it up the longest is Twitter, because I'm able to set the settings on Twitter for a full week. The other places usually keep those up for only like 2 days. So I tabulate them from everywhere. But Twitter and Reddit are the 2 places that keep them up the longest. Because Reddit, you just comment underneath it. So if you go to the Reddit Las Vegas page, you can comment underneath that Las Vegas TV show, I think it is. You can comment underneath those polls and you can find it there. But yeah, all that is helpful. Sharing is caring, as you know, is helpful. And that's the best way to help support the podcast if you are not monetarily able to do so. If you are financially able, kudos to you. And also, go ahead and financially support if you can. The best way, again, right now is still Patreon. I'm still going to do the Patreon. Cash App is another good way of doing that as well. But Patreon, those are the 2 that actually seem to be responding. You could be a guest and do that for free. If you would like to support and just kind of put your name in the hat, like our guest Angie is, that's great. You could be an entertainment reporter, or entertainment, not reporter. I would say reporter for a reason. You can be our entertainment manager tier, like Tony is, which is $10 a month, or $10. Yeah, which is $10, and per whatever cycle is, I think it's a month. And you get different access to different things, including early episodes when they are available, but also ad-free episodes of the video. Ad-free episodes of the audio, I think, is $5 tier. Also, Anthony, though, has been posting his recent meet and greet with his favorite queen, Vanessa Marcel. Shout out to him for that. That looked like it was an incredible show and circumstance. I looked up their tour. They're not anywhere near me anytime soon. But shout out to our entertainment reporter, Anthony. Managing tier, Anthony, for that. You can join him on any of the tiers that you see fit for what you get here with the Podecito. We appreciate you on all aspects of that. And that, of course, helps with refunding and recommitting more time and effort, energy, and other resources to improving the podcast as well. And we appreciate that. Next episode is a personal favorite of mine. I can already tell you that my grade for this next episode is probably higher than the other grades that we're going to hear for this episode. It is a good run of bad luck. I love this episode. This is one of my favorite episodes. This is what I would consider a Las Vegas classic episode. I love a good run of bad luck, and I cannot wait to talk to you about that. But that's next week. That's next time here at the Podecito. In the meantime, in the between time, before we get there, I just want to say thank you once again for joining me on this journey. And as always, please remember, first off, laughter! Wait, no. Buble! Wait, no. Oh, right. Take care.
No guilt, no shame, no pity. You play the game, baby, insensitive. Can't take the heat, you can't take the pain. Well, the play